Hi, friends, and welcome back. I have a very special guest. He is best known for his work as Adrian Monk in the hit USA Network series Monk, the Obsessive Compulsive Detective. For 8 consecutive years, he was Emmy nominated for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series and won the award 3 times. This is in addition to a Golden Globe Award and 2 SAG Awards for his work on the show. He then went on to portray Abe Weissman on Amazon Prime Video's The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, for which he has won the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series and 2 SAG Awards for his outstanding performance as male actor in a comedy series. Most recently, he returned to the iconic role as Monk in Peacock's critically acclaimed Mr. Monk's Last Case, a Monk movie, receiving Best Actor in a Limited Series or Television Movie nominations from SAG and Critic Choice Awards. He has an impressive resume of Broadway credits in addition to a long list of feature film credits, including Men in Black and one of my favorite comedies, Galaxy Quest. He is also the voice of Luigi in the Cars franchise. He was born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He graduated from Yale Drama School, and he is married to the beautiful and talented Brooke Adams. And with that, I want to welcome my friend, Tony Shalhoub.
Thank you, Jackie. And I want to say that thanks to you bringing Monk to USA Network and bringing me into it, kind of was a major life change for me. So I owe you. I owe you big time.
I would say the same for you. My career was very much made by the success of Monk. And so I feel like I owe the turning point of my career to you. And I am so tickled to have you on this podcast today. And I think for some people, it might be kind of like, well, what's the common denominator of I obviously have become a life coach as of 5 years ago. I've had this podcast for a number of years. I've had many writers and actors on the podcast. But the connection to you is so special because, again, my career after almost 20 years in the business really changed a lot with the success of Monk, and I know yours did as well.
Very much so.
But the role of playing an obsessive compulsive detective and being an 8 time Emmy nominee and 3 time winner for that role, you did some spectacular, extraordinary work that is not just iconic, but legacy work. People still come up to me today and say, "Oh my God, did you work on Monk? And did you know Tony? And he's amazing."
Mhm.
And so many people who suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, which is becoming actually more and more ubiquitous, probably because of our overstimulated society.
Mm.
People often ask me, is he like that in real life? So I have to start with that question.
Well, that's a question I get very often. And I guess the truth is I am to a degree. My wife would say I'm much more so than Monk. But I think I was to begin with, and I think I have to admit that 8 seasons of that show, probably in the middle there, somewhere around season 4 or 5, a lot of his characteristics started to rub off on me. It was inevitable. I mean, of course, we had those hiatus periods, so
Mhm.
I could kind of get back to a a little bit more normalcy, but then we'd get back into the shooting, and then I'd find myself just being a little more obsessive and a little more cautious than usual.
And where does it manifest for you? Because I also suffer from this. I know our colleagues on the show did. How does it manifest for you?
Oh, in a myriad number of ways. I mean, look, I actually sort of find myself doing things and thinking, "This isn't really necessary, and it's time consuming. Why are we doing this?" I'm talking to myself. What is this? How is this going to improve, your environment? How is it gonna improve your life or someone else's life? And, the answer is often it isn't. I guess in a way it's almost like it's therapeutic or it helps me to sort of refocus or focus on something outside of myself, outside of my, worries or anxieties. It may not be soothing to other people watching me do it, but it's soothing to me. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
And when you're saying that, you're talking about having things in order or having things
Yeah,
clean
having things
or
orderly, both.
uh-huh.
orderly, I don't even know where to begin, Jackie, things in the refrigerator, for example,
Uh-huh.
things that people put in the
Uh-huh.
dishwasher the wrong way, or
Yeah.
even things in the cupboard make it not as efficient, or, moving things around or taking things. Well, I don't
Yeah.
want to have to move something to take something else out or knock it into something, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
can't everything be orderly in a relative to their size and shape? And
Yeah.
for example, a very obvious, I think a lot of people, I hope a lot of people in the world would agree with me that in the refrigerator, for example,
Uh-huh.
when people, and I'm not naming names, but when people put the short item on the tall shelf,
Uh-huh.
that's a problem because it means that then there's not room for the tall item on the
Uh-huh.
on the tall shelf.
Uh-huh. I
Because
get it.
the short item will fit both places, but the tall item, no. So I have to spend valuable seconds of my life moving the short items to the short shelf to make room for the tall.
I'm laughing because you're speaking my language. So that's why I'm laughing. I'm laughing with you.
And it sounds like a small thing, but
No.
it's part of a larger for me, a larger problem. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There's a Look, we're getting older, right? And so we have more behind us than ahead of us, obviously,
Yeah.
in terms of
Yeah.
time and experience.
Mhm.
So those moments add up. Those seconds add up to moments, and those moments add up into
Yeah.
over a course of however many years we have left. And I'd rather not have to squander those valuable seconds. Is that nutty? Maybe.
No, that's as good of a reason as any to have things orderly. In my house, we call it shelf violations. The
Ah,
potato chips go on a particular shelf and they go with like the crackers and other things that are kind of snacky.
hello.
And and the reason for that is number 1, so you don't end up with like a small bag of crumbs in the back, like collecting dust or whatever. You also don't overbuy and you don't waste food because if everything is visible and you know where it is. So my husband will often, he does not share my OCD. Oh, we weren't supposed to name names of who's putting the things on the wrong shelf, but
I
I
think
do.
everyone knows. I think
Oh,
everyone.
you think they do?
Yeah, pretty much.
Probably. So, I'll go into the pantry and I'll be like, there's so many shelf violations here. I don't even know where to start. And like the spice cabinet, like put the spices with the spices. Don't put it somewhere else, right?
Or how about things in those drawers or in the refrigerator or in any cabinet or pantry with the labels out? I just want to see what it is. I know I need to know what it is, right? I don't wanna have to, like, go in and why do I need to rotate it or flip it over, or you know what I mean? Just
I
show.
do.
And if everything went back where it normally should go, then I don't have to hunt around for it. Why not
Right.
just open the thing and reach in, and you could do it, I should be able to do it in the dark, right? Oh,
Right.
I go here, here's the yogurt. Oh, here's the thing. What if
Yeah.
my God forbid the light in the refrigerator goes out?
That's planning ahead.
Reminds me of a great Maisel line where Maren Hinkle, who played my wife, Rose, is told that the light in the refrigerator is out in their apartment. And she says,
Mhm.
"There's a light in the refrigerator." I love that line.
I love that line
They
too.
have a because they have a housekeeper.
That's a
Um,
great segue, though. I would like to talk about Maisel. We'll come back to Monk in a minute, but I'd love to talk about Maisel for a second because I think I even wrote a blog post about it in my former blog. That series, so there's not even enough adjectives to compliment it. It was so extraordinary out of the gate. The costume design, the set design, the direction, the acting, the writing, the repartee, the premise, the love letter to New York. Every moment of that series was like shot out of a cannon. As a TV viewer, I'm speaking only as a viewer now because I had nothing to do with the show. And you weren't like my Jewish grandfathers, but you are like so many Jewish grandfathers I knew. Mine were just of a different flavor. But the fact that well, and this just speaks to your talent as an actor, and I've said this for years, you have played so many different nationalities. You yourself are 100% Lebanese, and yet
Yeah.
you've played Italians, Jews. I can't even count how many different nationalities you play because you're so versatile. Your voice is versatile, your face is versatile, and you lean into the subtleties of these particular, it's not even nationalities, it's cultures. And you do it so beautifully, but Abe Weissman
I
was extraordinary.
thank you. I but again, and this goes back to the monk, those glorious compliments you paid me. I'd love to take credit for it all, but the reality is that it involves so many other brilliant people. I mean, starts with the writing, of course. Andy Breckman and his team on Monk, and Amy Sherman Palladino and Dan Palladino on Maisel and their team. You know, when you've got that level of writing, it's very hard to make a misstep. Then you have, on Monk, for example, we had David Oberman as our one of our exec producers who was always, guiding the ship and keeping us on track and never sending up the OCD too much and always kind of keeping us honest. And then, Randy Zisk, our director showrunner, who was able to work miracles in terms of like how efficiently that show ran and what he was able to
Yes.
do with the amount of time we were given and the budget we were given, and make it look like a much more expensive show. And then of course the other actors I got to work with, with Chad Levine and Jason Gray and Natalie and Hector Elizondo and I mean, Tim Bagley, all those amazing that whole ensemble. And then on Maisel, my God, you we had the best of everybody. We had the best Steadicam operator who facilitated our ability to do these 3, 4, 5 minute takes
Yeah.
with many cuts,
Yeah.
moving through an apartment, through a building. I mean, things that nobody else could really do.
Yeah.
Then Donna Zakowska, the costume designer, true artist, and Bill Groom, our art director guy. I mean, so many heavy hitters in every department. There is the award arena and all that, but people you don't want people to lose sight of the fact that we're in a collaborative endeavor here,
Yeah.
and that just takes so many people working at the top of their game to make
Yeah.
this stuff sing.
Yeah. I had Bonnie Hammer on the podcast a few weeks ago, and we were
Yeah,
talking about her new book. And in the book, she talks about it takes a village, the old cliche, it takes a village.
yeah.
And then she says, it takes more than a village. And she was talking about raising a family and being a corporate executive, but it applies to television features as well. It literally takes a village to do one of those scenes. I mean, everybody you just named to create a, 3, 4 page steady cam shot and have this feature like experience on a TV show and make it look better than any feature I've seen. I mean, just extraordinarily good.
And not just funny, but poignant and with depth and with present day relevance. That's the beauty of Maisel too, that, it's taking place in the late 50s, early 60s, and yet it's speaking to, women now and
Yes.
it's and even politics now and,
Yes. Yes.
civil rights and all of these things that were important then that are important now and are connected. So that's another whole feat in itself for the writers and the producers.
Right.
And of course, you have for Monk, we had the support, nurturing care of you guys at on the network side and the studio side, you know, promoting it and building it and putting it out there in the ads and the promos and they took such good care of us.
Yeah. I mean, look, you were our flagship show. You took a network that was 20 some years old
Sure.
and relaunched it to being not only number one in cable, which didn't mean anything yet, right? Because cable wasn't a competitor,
Yeah.
but like we were beating network shows on
Oh
basic
yeah.
cable. And so to reignite or basically start a company again
we can talk for hours about, the talent of people and the work ethic and the commitment and all that. But also, there's this, I just want to say some of it has to do with it's just a little bit of luck and timing. Timing is so important.
I
I
agree.
look, you and I know because you were the main piece of it all, was sitting at another network
Yeah.
for what, 4 years before 3, 4 years, whatever.
Yeah.
Before it, you walked it across the street, and then it was at USA for a while. I'm not convinced that had Monk launched 4 years earlier, network or not, that it would have caught fire the way it did with me or with another actor. I just don't believe it.
Uh,
I really think it has something to do with the timing.
yes.
I think I said this too in the early interviews when we first started the show. 9/11 happened, right?
Mm, mhm.
And all of the sudden, as a culture, as a country, we're in a age of anxiety has taken on a whole new meaning.
Yep.
And this character reflects deep, deep phobias and fears.
Yeah.
And that's a very subliminal thing. So again, timing. I
Yeah.
don't know that in the late 90s it would have really clicked. And maybe if we had started it 4 years later, some other things that were similar would have come into the mainstream and then that would have diminished. It was just it was like that, who knows what. It was
But
just
but
like that.
don't you think that's true in all aspects of life? I feel like
Yes. Yeah.
yes, I feel like, when you met Brooke, wasn't that timing? Like, you're
Random.
in
I mean,
this
my whole life is about random events. I could go all
yeah,
the way back to my freshman year of college when I literally was walking down the hallway and saw this thing, and then all of a sudden, that one moment of this one day just launched me in this whole other direction, which took me to another place, which resulted in me ending up at the Yale Drama School, and then another thing, and then my wife comes. I mean, so many random events and things falling a certain way at a certain moment in time.
yeah.
It's
I love that. I obviously can't prescribe that as part of my coaching process, but I do talk about it, and we call
yeah,
it the woo, WOO, like the woo of like believing in something, like just put out the energy or manifest it. There's the hard work. There's the work, like we'll talk about this with you. You went to college. You went to Yale Drama School. You became an actor. You probably worked in equity waiver theater. You put in your
I did
steps.
nothing but theater for probably the first 8 or 10 years of my career after getting out of graduate school. I did 4 years up in Cambridge at a repertory theater. Got moved to New York, more theater, tiptoed, into film and television, did a day players on soap operas like so many people did, and did, little guest spots on this show or, The Equalizer was shooting in New York at
Yeah,
that
yeah.
and then somehow, you know, got a small job on a film or which led you know what I mean, led to Wings in LA. Random. Lucky, very lucky.
Prior to going to Yale Drama School, what was your thinking in college or pre-college about acting, becoming an actor, or what you were going to do for a living? What was the plan before Yale Drama School? Once you're in Yale Drama School, I get the plan. What happened before Yale Drama School? Walk me
It's a
through this.
it's an excellent question because the truth is I didn't know. I mean, the truth is I was in such a fog in college. I mean, I was the first couple of years of college, I really was spinning my wheels. I was searching around, what do I took random liberal arts courses and what would I like to do? What would I be good at? What sparks my interest? I was acting a little, but it was more of like kind of like a hobby thing on the side. It never registered with me that that would be a viable life choice or a career path, certainly. I just didn't know that that was a thing that people could do. I didn't know how one did that. I
So
think
the girl that was walking down the hallway freshman year that you made the right turn and bumped into or talked to, and then something that
no.
led to
Well,
Yale
that
Drama
was
School.
actually it was a kiosk. It was a
Oh,
we
okay.
I was going to school in my freshman year in my hometown, and I was in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
University of Wisconsin in Green Bay, and it was all my high school friends had gone off to cool places, to college, and there I was still living at home, and I was like, "Why am I here?" And it was a good school, it was fine,
Yeah.
but I was feeling restless and like, "I need to move on." But I was in a situation where I really couldn't afford to go to an out-of-state school, right?
Mhm.
And I was there because I could pay in-state tuition and live at home. It was affordable and all that. Anyway, so there was this kiosk in the hallway, just sort of appeared, and it was something called National Student Exchange Program.
Mhm.
It was about changing schools. Basically, the idea was you would still be enrolled at your home school, but you'd basically be taking classes and it would allow people to go out of state and explore and, whatever. And so they had a list of about 20 places. So, and one was Hawaii, by the way. I don't know what, growing up in freezing cold, why didn't I
Uh-huh.
go to Hawaii? That would have been a smart move. My girlfriend at the time was going to school in Colorado. I should have probably chosen that. But this is the honest to God, this is how random. And there was one school on there in Maine, right?
Yep.
And it's like something clicked in the deep recesses of my brain, and I had never been to Maine. I'd never really been that many places yet, but and I just thought, I kind of think Maine is mm, mm, I gotta go to Maine. I don't know why.
'Cause it's
Pictured
the
my
2nd coldest state in the US? I
Yeah,
don't know.
that's right. When I told people in Green Bay that I was doing that, were like, "That's cold too," and then when
Yeah.
I got to Maine, they thought, "You came from Green Bay to here? What are you,
Yeah.
insane?" I have this image of myself, like, in a, like, fisherman's sweater walking on the beach, man, like, smoking about I don't even know I was like, "Why
You
am
had
I
eaten too
going
wait, you
there?"
had eaten too many Gordon's fish sticks or Gorton's fish sticks, right?
I had never eaten a lobster in my life at this point, right? Maybe a red lobster. Anyway, I thought, "Maine, it's Maine. That's where it is." Didn't know anyone there, never been to New England, got to Maine, and I swear this is the truth. Now it's my sophomore year on this exchange program,
Mhm.
and weirdly, this school in Portland, Maine, had a phenomenal it was a state school, had a phenomenal theater department, just
Wow.
unbelievable, random,
Wow.
and I was like, "Wow." I got in with some of the teachers, I started taking some classes, and all of a sudden, things just really started to gel. So I ended up transferring there, which you weren't supposed to do, but I did it
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
And then I met this great woman and I fell in love, and it was all that was happening. But I got to work so much in the theater there, and that led to going to the drama school at Yale. And again, I don't think I would have known about Yale or gotten the amount of experience, good experience, had I gone to another larger school and been a smaller fish in a bigger pond, let's say.
Interesting. And you had some prestigious classmates.
Yes, in the classes before me, in the classes, certainly in the classes after me. 2 years behind when I was third year. In the first year was Jane Kaczmarek and Frances McDormand and Kate Burton and all these John Bedford Lloyd, all these great people.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Amazing.
in the year behind me, David Allen Greer and Eve Gordon and wonderful people. Yale was a real game changer, that
Yeah.
that program. And
Yeah.
also because it was such a small kind of I I hesitate to use the word because it's gotten such a bad connotation these days, but such an elite sort of group,
Yes. Yeah.
directors, playwrights, designers.
Yeah.
Donna Zakowska, the costume designer of Maisel, was at Yale after
Oh,
me.
is that right?
Turturro was there just after me. A lot of people, Liev and all those guys came after me, Patty Clarkson and those people.
And didn't
Um,
you have Sigourney Weaver in your
she was no, she was actually before me. She and Meryl
she's
Streep were
before.
like the years
Oh,
before me. So
oh, oh,
all
oh.
we did was when we got there was we just heard about how
Oh, oh,
fantastic.
oh.
Like, then I worked with Sigourney, of course, in Galaxy Quest, so we have
Right.
that connection too.
First of all, some of my favorite actors in the world are in that cast, but the writing is so sharp. I've seen it so many times. It always makes me laugh out loud. It's really hard to make me laugh out loud, but
It really holds up that film,
it
um,
does.
after what, 24 years or so.
Were you guys giggling when you were making it or no?
All the time,
Oh, you
all
were? Oh, okay.
it's
Okay,
one of
so
the
you were
most
in on the joke.
it
Okay.
was one of the most fun experiences. What I didn't know when we were doing it, what I didn't realize till we, were there at the screening was how much heart and how kind of moving it is in
Yeah.
moments, and that
Yeah.
was all Dean Pariseau.
Oh.
He was the director.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He was the one that brought the heart to it and the depth to it, because it could have been a much frothier, goofier, and that's why, speaking of which, I asked Dean to direct the pilot of Monk.
Yeah.
Remember, because we were
Yeah.
kicking ideas for directors.
Yeah.
I had done 2 years prior, I had done Galaxy Quest, and I knew Monk. I had a sense that Monk needed a certain tone, a balance between the really, the funny stuff and the more poignant stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And I knew that Dean had done it so beautifully with Galaxy Quest, and I asked him, and he fortunately was available and liked the script, and
Yeah,
he
he did
really
a great job. He did a great job.
he launched it because he found, with Andy and Hoberman and all those guys, Dean found that sweet spot, in
Yeah.
the tone of it.
Well, we talked about the tightrope walk because that's
Totally.
what it was. Because
So
it could have
to answer your
been
question, yeah, Galaxy Quest was one of the most fun experiences in the shooting of it.
yeah.
Because you had Sam Rockwell and
Yeah.
Sabrina Tim and Rico Colantoni,
Yeah.
another Yaley.
And Alan Rickman, who
Alan Rickman, oh my
I
god.
mean, I love everything he did. I'm so sad he was gone too soon, but he had to be hilarious in it too, right? I mean,
So brilliant, so
so he
funny.
would giggle too.
It was funny because the most fun we all had was Tim was Tim was just a lunatic. I mean, he is a lunatic, but on the set, he's got that kind of brain that just keeps going and riffing, and he would be he would still be, like, joking and messing
Uh-huh.
after Dean said action, it's like,
Uh-huh.
"Okay, action," and Tim was just complete, and there were times when Alan would look over at Sigourney and be like, sort of roll his eyes like, "Are we ever gonna be able to
Right.
get the take and make our day?" But it was all in fun because Tim
Right.
was so funny. He had that sort of Robin Williams
I was just gonna say you took the words out of my I was gonna literally interrupt you and say that's what Robin used to do on sets. He could
unstoppable.
you
Yeah,
couldn't stop him.
it translates to the screen as great energy and sort of this sort of fire hose of comedic, energy and sensibility.
Yeah.
But when you actually have to eventually sort of say the words on the page.
I
Uh,
worked briefly with Harold Ramis when I was a young secretary, and he had just finished directing I can't even think which one, Camp something, I think. Anyway, it was a Robin Williams movie, and I said, "What was it like working with him?" And he said, "There's no way to control him. There's just no way to control him. He's too funny, he's too smart, he's too manic, it's just not possible." But he said, "So what we did was we allowed it to do 6 takes of every scene Robin's way." Which meant off book, out of his mind,
of course.
complete improv, go crazy, crack up like the cameras would shake, he said, because the crew couldn't stop laughing. And then the deal was that one take every time had to be exactly as written. So that was the deal.
And he did it.
And he
And they
did.
probably used a lot of his takes, I'm sure.
Probably, but they're really hard to cut together because nobody can feed off the line. Nobody knows the entry point for the dialogue,
No
and he
cues.
just
No.
goes crazy. But anyway, Tim Allen is a little bit like that too.
Jim was
Honest
great, and we all had so much fun. We didn't want it to end, and it was a long shoot, we were in LA a lot, then we had to go to Utah to shoot The Planet at a place called Goblin Valley. Yeah, it was really joyful, and it's
love that.
interesting, I think the movie, when it came out, did well. It did
Yeah, but I think
really
it did
well.
better later is what happened. Became kind of a cult classic later.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I wonder too about whether it was just, again, the timing or possibly the way they promoted it, or I'm not sure what it was. Again, for me, it's almost always about the timing.
Yeah.
Maybe it was ahead of its day.
Maybe, maybe. Let me go back to something that we were talking about. So, once you sort of dabbled in theater, you thought it was fun, it was kind of a hobby, you did some plays or you took some classes or what have you, and then you found this school in Portland, Maine that had this theater
Yeah.
department. That led you to Yale. Now you're on the road. Now you're like, "Okay, well, I have an MFA from Yale," which is
Oh,
very
before that, I thought, before the idea of Yale entered into it, which was very 11th hour, I thought I guess maybe I'll teach. I could be a teacher or I
okay.
could keep going on in school where I was in Maine. Maybe take graduate courses. There was a little theater in Portland at the time. It was a sort of semi-professional. Some of the people were equity, some not. It was a little place called Profile Theater, which we all, as students, we loved because they were like really doing the stuff in town. And they let me come into their company my senior year, which was a big deal. I started out like running for props and running lights, and then they would give me small parts in that group during my senior year. And that since has become Portland Stage, actual regional theater. So I didn't really know until I got into Yale that I thought, well, now maybe there's a lane that's opened up for me to pursue it
Yeah.
as a serious career.
So, from that moment till now, what was the thought process? Because getting to LA, well, you obviously were in New York for a long time doing Broadway, off Broadway, but making a living as an actor, there's a big gap between studying to be one and then making a living as one. How did you bridge that gap mentally so that you, in between auditions, in between gigs, in between roles, you stayed the course? What was your process, either physically, mentally, emotionally? Because I think it applies to so many other careers where people are passionate about a creative endeavor. And it's just so hard to stay afloat before you make it.
It is, it is. That's another excellent question. The first thing I did when I worked in the theater in Boston, I was really gonna just stay for 1 year, and then I'm gonna be like, "And then I'm gonna go to New York," and
Hmm.
I really ended up staying for 4 seasons, and the reason was because, first of all, the quality of life there was great. We weren't making a lot of money, but we were being paid. It was a paying gig, 10 months a year, working in the theater, doing really interesting things with a lot of interesting and we were forming a company.
Mm,
And I didn't want to come right to New York because I I got out of school, I was in debt. I had no money and I wasn't getting money from my parents or anything. And so I needed to save some money. I didn't want to come to New York and be a waiter or, be a
hmm
messenger. Just
hmm
I wanted to work. And so I stayed in Cambridge for 4 seasons. And even though we weren't making much, I saved everything I could. I just
mm,
able to I had a roommate and, apartments were affordable. I didn't have a car. I didn't really own anything, and I didn't really want to own anything. Saved what I could so that when I did move to New York, I had a little bit of a cushion. I wouldn't
hmm
have to go if I didn't work right away, I, wouldn't have to get a waiter job or something.
hmm
As it turned out, I got very lucky and got a job fairly soon after I, got to New York, a good paying job. So that was a theater job. So,
What was the first gig in New York?
it was
Acting gig.
The female Odd Couple. Neil Simon rewrote The Odd Couple for women. Rita Moreno, Sally Struthers, and all these great character actresses.
Wow.
And me and this other guy, Louis Stadlin, played the counterpart to the Pigeon Sisters. We were these sort of proper Spanish. We were from Spain, gentlemen who worked for Iberia Airlines or something. We were the dates for the two divorced,
Uh-huh.
and we did an out of town started with an out of town tour, and then we brought it into Broadway, and it was a big deal for me because it was like my second audition in New York. It was crazy how it happened,
Wow. Wow,
and
wow.
I had never done Neil Simon. It was really fun.
Yeah.
But the point is that you were asking about what my process was.
Your process to
My
stay
my thing was
buoyant.
I had a restless, and maybe this goes back to the when I was in Wisconsin and I felt the need to get out. I was very happy in Cambridge doing theater and having a steady gig and not having to audition. I mean, I auditioned, but within the company. And after 4 years, because a lot of our company stayed on, it was a great life up there, and they wanted to keep doing. And I started to feel a slight sense of complacency set in.
Mm,
I had this weird feeling that I wanted to feel on edge again, and I wanted to feel a little scared again. I wanted to feel a little hungry again.
mm,
Opted to go to New York. Though I did have a little bit of money saved, I didn't have anything lined up. And the same thing happened again. I was in New York now, working a bit. After that Broadway show, I started to do little things on soap operas or, off Broadway or off Broadway, or going back out into regional theaters occasionally for weeks on end. And I was in New York and I was starting to get a little comfortable, and I got another Broadway show, and then I got the Bill Murray movie. Little things were happening, and then I started that feeling of comfortability or complacency set in again.
mm,
I was in a really good place in New York. I felt I was more comfortable going into casting offices, and I felt comfortable in auditions, and I was getting a toehold here, did Shakespeare in the Park, blah blah, and 6 years of that, I thought, "Oh my god, I gotta go to LA," and I just felt that restless thing again,
mhm.
and I went to LA, and it was really hard. It was like hitting a brick wall
Yeah.
because, weirdly, everything that I had done in New York and in Boston before really didn't count for much there.
I know. I know, they use different scorecards in LA.
My resume was mostly theater.
Yeah.
They said, "Oh," they wanted to see what I had on tape, and that's like, "Tape? What's tape?" told for I was told for 10 years, I had get a good resume, so I got a good re
Yeah.
they wanted to look at the resume.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's too much reading in LA,
Yeah.
So, "Where's the video?" I'm like, "Video? Well, I don't know video." Now, of course, that's all there is anymore. It's just
Right,
self-tape.
right. And
Anyway,
did you ever have to leave LA after that? I know you go back and forth, and I know you've always had a presence on the East Coast. That's not what I'm talking about. But did you ever have to leave LA once you got into that world, or was there always steady work after that? How long,
well, again,
between that and Wings came?
fortunate random things. I mean, the first, I would say, I mean, for an actor, people say, "Oh, it's, a few months," but it feels like an eternity because
Right.
when you're in the void, you
Yes.
don't know when the void's gonna ever end or if it's ever gonna end.
Yes.
So
Yes.
panic starts to creep in very soon.
Yes.
The weird thing was when I went to LA, I had good agents. They were sending me up a lot for good things, but I wasn't booking anything, and I wasn't even getting a call back. I was in New York, I was doing okay with the auditions. I was okay with the callbacks. There, it was crickets.
Yeah.
Until my Wings audition,
Yeah.
that the first thing where, it's like, I think because the casting director for NBC at that time.
Was it Mark Hirschfield?
No,
Who
it
was it?
was, shit, now the name escapes me. He was there, he was a fixture for decades, there's probably still there. He was a theater goer. So he had probably
Oh,
come to New York and seen me and all that, and on stage a lot. And he brought me in for this role in Wings, and it was a one-off. It was just a one episode.
I did not know that.
Yeah, one episode.
Wow.
And
And then
then,
the show ran forever.
well, I did this episode. They were already in the beginning, I think, of their second season or middle of their second season, and I did this episode, and that was it. It was like 4 or 5 days work.
Yeah.
I never done a sitcom. That was so fun because it was a
Yeah.
live audience that
Yeah.
that I knew about.
Yeah.
And then I went up to Seattle to do a play. The episode aired, I think, it was a Valentine's Day episode. And I was doing this play, and my agent said, "Hey, they're calling. They want to know if you want to come back and be a recurring on the show."
Yeah. You
And I was
said, "Yes,
absolutely,
absolutely."
and that was a wonderful cast, a group of people.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I know,
So
so much talent.
writers, directors,
Yeah.
and that was so interesting too because that was a time when Brooke and I got together, and you know, kids were coming, and it's such a great that sitcom schedule is so great for a young
The
family.
best. The best.
And every 3 weeks you have a week off, and it's really great.
And summers most of the summer off. It's pretty awesome. I wish they would bring sitcoms back, not just for that reason, but because they were
They were
so wonderful.
Yeah, really, really, that would be great. I would jump at the chance, by the way.
There you go. Maybe you'll bring it, maybe just putting it out there in the universe, you'll bring the genre back because I think we need that again. We
I do.
need that just good, easy laugh. And not that it's easy to write, but
No,
it's easy to laugh at.
yeah, we
That'd
need
be
that.
amazing.
But anyway, so that's you asked about process, and I think it's has something to do with first. I think it takes a real, in my life anyway, a real support system of family, of friends, of
Yeah.
coworkers.
Yeah.
There's always those times in any creative person's life, whether you're a musician or a painter or an actor or dancer or whatever, always those periods of dissatisfaction and self-doubt and
Yeah.
self-criticism and the insecurity. Your demons can especially when you're not working for a while, those demons can overtake you quickly. So
That's what I'm asking about.
keeping those demons at bay. And full disclosure here, I got into trouble in the early days, before we met him, even before Wings. My life, it was out of balance. It was unhealthy in the sense that I over focused and over worried, I guess, about my work, clawing my way up the career ladder, whatever that meant. It made myself really sick, physically sick. It manifested in a physical ailment. I actually ended up in the hospital in LA. I had to reboot and step back and
Mhm.
reevaluate what did I really want and what did I really need. And then thank God Brooke came into the picture again. And having that person and then a child and another child and things outside of myself. So much
Yes.
this business is like
Yes.
me. It's about me and what about me, and I have to
Yeah.
advance me. And
Yes.
once the energy starts going out, for me anyway, once that energy starts going out, things start to get more imbalance. I think
Yeah.
I try to tell people that I say, try to try to nurture and foster your friendships and your relationships and your physical health and your
Yes.
whether it's meditation or mental well-being. It'll inevitably it'll help your work.
Yes.
Being out in the world, that's the fuel that we use to in our work. If you're always in your work, you're not really experiencing the ups and downs of real life, and you have nothing to bring to the table when
Yes.
time to work. So
Yes.
when
That's
you need
such a great answer, Tony. I so love that. Before we wrap up, because I promised I would have you out in an hour, so I want to make sure
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
do.
I'm incapable of short answers, Jackie.
No, I love everything you're saying, but I want to just kind of put a little bow on it if we can,
Okay.
which is today, with all of the history that you've had, success you've had, variety you've had, raised a family, 2 coasts, theater, film, television, all the things. Do you now have any daily practices? You talked about making sure you get out of the work and see the world and connect to other people, connect to family, friends, very important. But because these are such pillars of what I coach on, which is self-care, not self-indulgence, but self-care so that you
Very
can then
2
show
very
up.
different things.
Very different things. Do you have a self-care routine? And when I say that, I don't mean washing your face. I'm not talking about that kind of self-care. I'm talking about whether it's meditation or it's exercise or it's prayer or whether it's travel.
First of all, it is exercise and diet. That I've learned over many years, and I talk a good game, but, I have talked a good game over the years, but really, really putting into practice and being consistent with it
Yeah.
is that's what I've started doing, and it's really, really helped, but, I think I'm fortunate again, it goes back to luck, and, I have this woman who is my wife, who is such a I lean so heavily into that. People ask, what is the key to a successful marriage or whatever? You have to be able to talk each other off the ledges. That's really all it boils down. You know what I mean? Because
Yes,
in
I
the middle of
do.
the night, when you wake up in a cold sweat and you're like,
Yeah.
"What about? What about?" You need that person that's just
Yeah.
like, "Okay,
Yeah.
you've you've survived such and such and such and such." Again,
Yeah.
that's a part of it. And in terms of like a meditation, for me, what I do, I don't do formal meditation, although I've tried a lot of that. For me, I learn poems, long
Oh,
poems,
interesting.
or long like monologues from plays.
Shakespeare? Yeah.
It can be Shakespeare, it can be modern plays. And I find that when I go into those are my meditation because it blocks out everything. And it
Uh-huh.
puts me on a it doesn't matter how many times you revisit the same one,
Uh-huh.
there's always something to draw from it or,
Uh-huh.
enjoy about it.
Uh-huh.
And those are the things that I use to reset myself. I think
Interesting.
life today in our incredibly complex and technology driven world, really, really getting back to, your inner voice and your call it whatever you want. I mean, it's recentering yourself. And I'm not on social media. I've made it just not because I don't really have anything against it, object. It's just for me, not my thing. And I have you wouldn't know it from this interview, but I value my privacy. I'm kind of strict about that.
Mhm. And I know that, and I so appreciate you doing this interview today because I know how private you are, and I love that about you. I love how much you adore your family. You have talked about them to me for 20 something years, and I love that, and I respect that privacy, and I still am so grateful that you spent the time with me today to talk about your life, your process, your career. I think that your fans will just adore this, but I also think my listeners who are here for, kind of guidance on how to stop their overthinking brains and those obsessive negative thought loops that we all get into, whether we're actors or writers or executives or lawyers, doctors.
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of, people always ask you, "Oh, so what advice do you have for?" My advice is I'm not a dispenser of advice necessarily because I find when I have done it, then I find, that's not really what I wanted to say, or it changes over time, right?
Yeah,
If I what I
it
thought
does
was
change.
what I thought 10 years ago or 15 or 20 years ago is not the advice I would give today. Only 2 I have 2 mantra it's mantras of
Yeah,
plural,
mantra.
and, the first one is th th and this maybe this helps your viewers, your listeners, I hope it does, but what I've really come to, it's not about you. I mean, meaning it's not about me. It's not
Mhm.
a if someone is struggling with something, really what I come to is we all think it is, and it's just not. Even my work, it's not about me. My problems or my issues, my things that are unresolved in my life, those 2 are they're not really about me.
Mhm.
They're about a larger
Mhm.
issue.
Mhm.
And my other mantra is, and it's something I heard in a meditation, uh, thing one time. I was at this group thing, and I'm sure you've heard this, but for me, it's really the thing that has gotten me, over a lot of what seemed like insurmountable humps, bumps, and that was something like it goes something like, "The pain pushes you until the vision pulls you." Have you heard that?
Wow. No, I've never heard that, but I love it.
It really stuck with me, and it makes so much sense. I try to go back to that. It's like an exercise in when you're circling the drain, so to say.
Yes. Yes.
Ultimately, it's actually a blessing in disguise in a way. I believe illness is a blessing in disguise. That's a whole nother,
Mhm.
discussion if we ever do this again.
Mhm.
Um, but whether it's psychic pain or anything, physical pain, whatever it is, it presses against you. It's that obstacle that pushes against you to move you to a point of revelation or vision,
Mhm. Mhm.
which if you don't succumb to the negativity of the pain of that,
Yeah.
will eventually reveal itself.
I love that. That's
It just
such an
sounds like
optimistic way to look at pain as opposed to becoming a victim of your own suffering and to say, "This is going to teach me something. I'm going to get something valuable out of this. I don't know what, I don't know when, but something will come of it if I
but but you need to
release it."
stay it forces you in a way, or it encourages you, I should say, to stay watchful and
Yeah.
for what is that thing that's going to be the vision or the moment that where the penny drops, you know?
Yeah.
But if your eyes are down and you're looking sort of inward so much, you're not gonna see it. It's gonna that moment is gonna fly by you. It's
Yeah.
gonna
Well, you're gonna miss the kiosk that tells you about the exchange program.
it's true because it's all so random.
It
I
is random, but you do still have to read the signs, right? Tony, this was such a tremendous pleasure. I have loved seeing you. I have loved spending this hour with you. I love your wisdom. I love that you've shared your stories. It's amazing to catch up. Anyway, this has been a pleasure. I will say goodbye and I will say thank our listeners for listening, and I hope to see you soon.
Yes, I'm coming to Maui. I don't know when, but I'm coming.
I love it. All right. Talk to you soon.